This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You are not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You're the all-singing, all-dancing crap of the world.
Welcome to Truth and Shadow, your guide through the supernatural. I am your host, BT, and this is a Shadow Short. Let's navigate the unknown on this brief journey into the depths of mystery.
I didn't set out to write a sermon, and this isn't a lecture. It's more like a realization, a personal one. You see, something in me has been haunted for a while now, not by a ghost, but by this question. What if the greatest danger we face today isn't war or politics, even technology? It's the loss of our soul. Not just in the religious sense, I mean the psycho-spiritual core of the human person, the self that longs for meaning, that speaks in symbols, that suffers, that hopes. Carl Jung called it the loss of a soul just about a century ago, and he saw what was coming. An age where man would master the external world but lose all connection to the internal one. He warned of what would happen if we cut ourselves off from the sacred, from myth, from the unconscious, from the stories that tether us to God and to each other. And here we are. Not just modern, but postmodern. We live in an era that doesn't just deny truth, it fragments it. We've replaced mystery with algorithms, prayer with scrolling, and deep meaning with dopamine. We've stopped asking, who am I? And instead we ask, what do they want me to be? So in this episode, I'm calling it Postmodern Man in Search of a Soul. I return to Jung, not because I idolize him, but because he spoke a language we desperately need to hear again. It's a language of depth, of integration, of sacred suffering and inner transformation. So I'm not just critiquing postmodernism, I'm offering an antidote. This is for the listener who feels unmoored, who can't quite name the ache, who's drifted from God, from meaning, from themselves, and is trying to find their way back. Because I believe the soul isn't gone. It's just waiting to be remembered. And I hope, truly I hope, that this episode helps you remember. He has more knowledge than any man before him. He can alter DNA with a few keystrokes. He can fly not by wings or faith, but by machine. He holds the power to destroy nations from a screen. He maps the stars with satellites and simulates dreams in silicon. He's a god in theory. And yet, something in him is hollow. Not broken, because even broken things cry out. No, this is something deeper. This is emptiness, a vacuum where meaning should be. And in that hollow, the soul should dwell. But the soul is missing. This is the age of postmodern man in search of a soul. In 1933, Carl Jung peered into the collective psyche and found a splintered man, cut off from his center, severed from the sacred. In his book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, he didn't merely speak to individuals, but to an entire era. An age where meaning had become mechanized, where symbols had been reduced to signs, where religion had been exiled and myth demoted to entertainment. He called it the loss of soul, and he meant it literally. Jung saw the soul not as some sentimental abstraction, but as a vital organ of being, something deeper than the ego, older than the flesh, oriented toward mystery. And he warned that man without it would become sick, spiritually sick, psychologically hollow, vulnerable to ideologies and illusions that masquerade as salvation. He saw it all coming. The rise of collectivist political religions, the cult of science without conscience, and the disintegration of man into either machine or beast. But even then, Jung still believed that there was a way back. But now we're not just modern, we're postmodern. And what Jung warned about in seed form, we now live in full bloom. We've moved past belief in absolutes, past coherent systems, past meaning itself. In our postmodern world, truth isn't rejected, it's fragmented, drowned in a sea of relativism, irony, and fabricated identity. The self is no longer a mystery to explore, but a brand to design. We don't become, we perform. We don't confess, we project. We don't suffer, we edit. We are a people addicted to performance and paralyzed by silence. What Jung called the individuation process, that is, the journey into wholeness, we now avoid with scrolling and self-medication, because to individuate means to descend into the dark, and postmodern man is terrified of darkness. Not just the external kind, but the inner dark, the silence where he might meet himself. He has no myth, no map, no sacred language, just preferences. He lives like a god, but aches like an orphan. There is a reason depression is an epidemic, why anxiety stalks the lives of even the most privileged. While people report feeling lonelier despite being surrounded by constant digital noise, the shadow is screaming to be seen, but postmodern man has no name for it, no theology for it, no story that can contain it. He is not just in crisis. Truth is, he's in exile from himself. Let's talk about what we're actually facing, because we're not just dealing with mental health in the clinical sense. We're bleeding from deeper wounds. Wounds of meaning, wounds of identity, wounds of origin, wounds that can't be treated with SSRIs or weekend retreats. We're psychologically atomized. Relationships are shallow. Trust is rare. We present filtered avatars to each other, afraid of being seen raw and real. We live alone, even in crowds. We're intentionally shattered. Our minds are broken into tiny pieces by an economy designed to monetize our distraction. We've lost the ability to go deep into thought, into story, into prayer. We're sexually confused, spiritually starved. Desire has been severed from love, and love from covenant. Our deepest human longings are now reframed as consumer preferences. And when that doesn't work, when the body still aches for union, we're told to numb it or redefine it. We're historically amputated. The past is ridiculed. Tradition is seen as oppressive. The wisdom of the ancients discarded for the novelty of the now. We've become cultural orphan. And through it all, the soul grows quieter. Jung once wrote, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." Today, I might say it, the greatest tragedy of this generation is the unborn soul of the individual. Not dead, not lost, unborn. Because we never let it emerge. So if you listen closely, you'll hear where the soul is. It's not in the noise. It's not in your curated algorithm. It's not in the dopamine loops we call content. But in the still moments, in the ache after your favorite show ends, in the dream you forgot to write down, in the poem you didn't understand but couldn't stop thinking about, in the story that broke you open, that's the soul. It doesn't shout or yell, it whispers. And postmodern man has forgotten how to hear them. The soul lives in the symbolic world that speaks through archetype, image, parable, myth, fairy tale. But we've silenced that language. We've traded the poetic for the literal, the mysterious for the measurable. And in doing so, we've made the soul homeless. And you could feel it, that low-grade panic, that sense something is missing. That no matter how much you succeed, perform, consume, something just isn't connecting. And that's not depression, that's not failure. That's your soul knocking. So let's be clear. Therapy is not the enemy. But therapy without soul becomes another mirror to stare into. We've built this secular priesthood around ourselves. We confess to therapists, influencers, social media, hoping to be absolved not of sin, but of our feelings of discomfort. We don't want wholeness. We long for validation. And we've mistaken emotional safety for healing. But Jung taught that healing doesn't come from comfort. It comes from integration, from facing the dark, not avoiding it, from reconciling opposites, from walking into the forest we're most afraid of. True therapy, true soul work, must include conscience, myth, transcendence, to rise above. It must see the person not as a bundle of behaviors to correct, but as a soul, a story in the process of becoming. Today we have therapy for symptoms, but not for meaning. We have medication for neurotransmitters, but not for the ache beneath. And until the soul is reintroduced, we are just polishing the mirror while the house burns down. Jung knew something we've forgotten: the archetypes. Those ancient symbolic patterns that seem to govern human life, they don't disappear. They evolve, they mutate. And if you ignore them, they possess you. Today we still worship gods, we've just renamed them. The archetype of the hero becomes the influencer. The archetype of the goddess becomes the OnlyFans icon. The trickster becomes the meme lord. The priest becomes the activist. And the martyr becomes the victim. Now, these roles aren't chosen, they emerge from the unconscious. And if we don't call them out, if we don't consciously embody them, they rule us from the shadows. This is why people claim to identity labels like sacred relics, why we form tribes around trauma and trends, why we cancel those who deviate from the script. It's because we live in a mythic world, we've just forgotten how sacred it is. And the longer we ignore the symbolic realm, the more twisted our stories become. If we don't return to true myth, we're going to keep reenacting counterfeit ones. There isn't a shortcut. There's not an app. There's no 3-step plan. There's only the path, and it begins in the dark. You've got to reawaken the symbolic imagination. And that means read myths not as fantasies, but as mirrors that reflect. Return to sacred texts, not to deconstruct them like literature, but to let them reconstruct you. Let the story become a sacrament again. We should embrace suffering. Pain is not the enemy. It's a portal. The wound is where the light enters, as Rumi said. We must stop pathologizing every ache and start listening to what it is tailing us. We must reclaim tradition, not as nostalgia, but as nourishment. The old ways weren't perfect, but they were formed by those who knew how to suffer, how to love, dare I say, how to die well. There is wisdom in liturgy and ritual and hierarchy. Don't throw it all away. We should face our shadows. The parts of ourselves that we've exiled are still there. We just have to integrate them. Don't let them become monsters. Wholeness itself is not perfection. It's a union of opposites. So we need to seek the sacred, not spirituality, not good vibes, emotional highs, but the sacred, the terrifying, the beautiful reality that you are not the center. That truth exists, that God is real, and that your soul is not a metaphor. It is your origin and your destiny. I want to speak now, not as a podcaster, not as a theologian, or a psychologist, or even a storyteller, but as a man who has looked into the abyss and listened for something that could speak back. Because beneath all our theories, all our arguments, all our defenses, there's a question. It's not academic. It's not even intellectual. It's something more primal, more sacred. The question is this: am I still in there? In the noise of modern life, in the static of timelines, traffic, and trauma, is there anything left of me that is real? I'm not talking about your job title, not your curated trauma narrative, not your politics, your preferences, your crafted profile, or the masks you wear for the people who you love. I mean you. The you that existed before the world told you who you were supposed to be. Before you were wounded. Before you were broken. Before you got really, really good at pretending. Is that self still in there? Carl Jung believed that the soul wasn't an idea. It was an experience. And if you ignored it, if you buried it long enough, it would come back as a haunting. It'd be in a nightmare or a panic attack. In a moment of emptiness so deep it feels like grief. The modern world gave up the language of soul, but not the ache for it. And the postmodern world, we didn't lose the ache, we drowned it in distraction. But even now, even in a world like this, the soul has not stopped speaking. It speaks in symbols, in dreams. It speaks in the feeling you get when you hold a dying parent's hand, or watch a child sleep and wonder how you could love something so fiercely. It speaks in the ache after the prayer when God doesn't answer with words, but with His presence. It speaks in the stories that break you in ways you can't explain. The soul is mythic. It does not obey algorithms. It does not conform to ideologies. It's a mystery. It is you, beyond you. And if you want to find it, you have to leave the light and go into the cave. In one of his dreams, Jung stood before a giant tree that stretched into the heavens. Its branches glowed with fire, its roots sank into shadow, and he realized this is the self, the true self, that it's not all light. It's both, it's union, above and below, heaven and earth, light and shadow. The problem with the modern man is not that he is too dark or too light, it's that he's split. He lives his life in fragments. And the soul doesn't survive fragmentation for long. It requires meaning, it needs ritual, it needs initiation, it needs something to suffer for. But in our world, suffering is offensive, and the sacred, well, that's optional. So we never grow up. We age, but we do not mature. We consume, but we do not become. And the self, well, it waits. She waits. Like a woman you left standing at the altar. She doesn't scream, she doesn't chase. She just stands and weeps. I have sat with people who've stared death in the face. I've stared death in the face. Not theoretically, not in movies, but for real. And when you're there, the layers peel away. No one asks about follower counts. No one clings to their political party or their brand. All they want to know is, did I love well? Was I loved in return? Does my suffering mean something? Did I forgive? Was I known? These aren't the questions of the ego, these are the questions of the soul. And we avoid them until it's too late. But you don't have to wait until then. You can listen to them now. Jung once said that the great task of the second half of life is not to succeed, but to integrate. To become whole. Not perfect, whole. To bring the lost child home, to forgive the father, to bless the shadow, to walk the myth you were meant to live. And to do that, you will have to suffer. You will have to descend. You will have to stop asking who you think you are. Instead, just ask, who am I really when no one is watching? When the lights are out, the crowd is gone, the phone is dead, when the noise has faded? Who's left? If there's an answer, that's your soul. And if not, it's time to go looking. You're not alone. Most people you'll meet, they're faking it. Because most are scared. And most are clinging to something that cannot save them. But here's the good news. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be wise. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to be willing to stop, to listen, to pray again, not to be heard, but to remember how to speak soul language, to pick up a story that's bigger than you, to find the myth your life was made to live, and perhaps to suffer well. You were made to be a mirror of the divine. Not to escape suffering, but to sanctify it. Not to avoid the shadow, but carry light into it. Not to brand yourself into oblivion, but to become a symbol of something eternal. So the soul is still here. It's not gone, it's not erased, it's not dead, it's waiting. It's waiting in the dream you dismissed, in the story that made you weep, in the silence you fear. It's waiting in the face of someone you need to forgive. It's in the prayer you haven't said in years. It's waiting in the pages of a book you never read because it scared you too much. It's waiting at the bottom of your grief, at the edge of your rage. It's waiting in the garden you abandoned when the world told you to grow up and forget. But the soul, it remembers and it wants you back. So when the night is dark and the silence finally comes, don't run. Listen. Because the soul is still speaking. And it is calling you home.
Thank you for listening. This is a free podcast based upon the value for value model. If you find value in this, or any episode, you can return that value by liking the show, subscribing to this channel, leaving a review, or sharing with a friend on your social media accounts. You can also donate on my website. Thank you again. This is BT for Truth and Shadow Podcast. You are the light in the darkness.